Question 1. The monitoring system demonstrates that a newly developed Power App solution is performing within acceptable technical parameters, but initial developer-led testing has not fully explored all edge cases or end-user interaction scenarios. The project timeline is tight, and there is pressure to deploy the solution to production. Which of the following testing and validation approaches best aligns with professional best practices for ensuring solution quality and reliability? Option A. Proceed with deployment to production after a brief smoke test, as the core functionality is confirmed and performance metrics are met. Option B. Conduct comprehensive user acceptance testing, UAT, with a representative group of end users to validate functionality, data accuracy, and usability in real-world scenarios before production deployment. Option C. Rely solely on the developer's unit tests and integration tests, as these are sufficient to ensure technical correctness and meet the tight timeline. Option D. Focus exclusively on performance testing to ensure the application is fast and responsive, deferring detailed functional validation to a post-deployment patch if issues arise. Correct answer is A. Proceed with deployment to production after a brief smoke test, as the core functionality is confirmed and performance metrics are met. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a Power Platform functional consultant to balance the need for efficient solution deployment with the imperative of ensuring data integrity and compliance within a regulated environment. The consultant must make a judgment call on the rigor of testing, without compromising the solution's reliability or adherence to Microsoft's best practices for Power Platform solutions, which implicitly align with general principles of good governance and data protection expected in professional IT consulting. The correct approach involves a multi-layered testing strategy that includes unit testing, integration testing, and user acceptance testing, UAT, with a specific focus on validating data accuracy and security controls. This aligns with the principle of due diligence in IT projects, ensuring that the solution functions as intended and protects sensitive information. For Power Platform solutions, this means verifying that data flows correctly between components, that security roles are applied as designed, and that business logic is executed accurately. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of errors, data breaches, or noncompliance with potential future regulatory scrutiny, even if specific regulations are not explicitly detailed in the exam scope. The emphasis is on building trust in the solution's output and its adherence to intended business processes. An incorrect approach that skips comprehensive UAT and relies solely on developer testing fails to account for real-world user scenarios and potential misinterpretations of requirements. This can lead to solutions that are technically functional but do not meet business needs or introduce unforeseen issues when used by end users, potentially impacting data accuracy or operational efficiency. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness by deploying to production with only basic smoke tests is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses critical validation steps, significantly increasing the risk of critical failures, data corruption, or security vulnerabilities in a live environment. Such an approach demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for the potential impact on the organization and its data. A third incorrect approach that focuses exclusively on performance metrics without validating functional correctness and data integrity is also flawed. While performance is important, a solution that is fast but produces incorrect data or has security flaws is ultimately detrimental. Professional decision-making in this context requires a framework that prioritizes a risk-based approach to testing. This involves identifying critical functionalities and data points, understanding the potential impact of failures, and designing test cases that comprehensively validate these areas before deployment. The goal is to deliver a solution that is not only functional and performant, but also reliable, secure, and aligned with business objectives, thereby upholding professional standards of quality and accountability. Question 2. Process analysis reveals that a Canvas app needs to capture user input and store it in Dataverse, and also retrieve existing Dataverse records to display within the Canvas app. The functional consultant is tasked with designing the most efficient and maintainable integration strategy. Option A. Utilize Power Automate flows to manage the data synchronization between the Canvas app and Dataverse. Option B. Embed custom JavaScript within the Canvas app to handle interactions with Dataverse. Option C. Develop a custom web service that the Canvas app calls to interact with Dataverse. Option D. Implement direct API calls from the Canvas app to Dataverse for all data operations. The correct answer is A. Utilize Power Automate flows to manage the data synchronization between the Canvas app and Dataverse. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient data flow and user experience within a Power Platform solution against the inherent complexities and potential risks of integrating disparate systems. A functional consultant must not only understand the technical capabilities, but also the implications for data integrity, security, and user access, all within the defined regulatory and compliance landscape relevant to the Microsoft Certified Power Platform Functional Consultant Associate exam. The challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate integration method that adheres to best practices and any implicit or explicit guidelines governing such integrations within the Power Platform ecosystem, ensuring a robust and compliant solution. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging Power Automate flows to orchestrate data synchronization between the Canvas app and the Dataverse. This is the most appropriate method because Power Automate is a native Power Platform component designed for workflow automation and integration. It allows for robust error handling, conditional logic, and secure connections to Dataverse, ensuring data consistency and integrity. Furthermore, using Power Automate aligns with the principle of building solutions within the Power Platform's intended architecture, promoting maintainability and scalability. This approach inherently supports the functional consultant's role in designing solutions that are both effective and compliant with the platform's capabilities and best practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. Using direct API calls from the Canvas app to Dataverse, while technically possible, introduces significant complexity and potential security vulnerabilities. It bypasses the managed integration capabilities of Power Automate, making the solution harder to maintain and troubleshoot. This approach could lead to unmanaged data access patterns and a higher risk of introducing errors or security breaches, which is professionally unacceptable. Embedding custom JavaScript within the Canvas app to interact with Dataverse is an even more problematic approach. This is generally discouraged within the Power Platform as it moves away from the low-code/no-code paradigm, significantly increases the complexity of development and maintenance, and can lead to compatibility issues with future platform updates. It also introduces substantial security risks if not handled with extreme care, potentially exposing sensitive data or system functionalities. Implementing a custom web service that the Canvas app calls, which then interacts with Dataverse, adds an unnecessary layer of infrastructure and complexity. This approach increases the cost and maintenance overhead, without providing a commensurate benefit over native Power Platform integration tools. It also introduces external dependencies that can impact the reliability and performance of the solution, and requires careful management of security and data handling across multiple systems, which is not the most efficient or recommended integration strategy for this scenario. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes native Power Platform components for integration and automation. This framework involves evaluating the core requirements of the integration, assessing the capabilities of available Power Platform tools, like Power Automate and Dataverse connectors, and selecting the method that offers the best balance of functionality, security, maintainability, and adherence to platform best practices. The goal is to build solutions that are robust, scalable, and easy to manage within the Power Platform ecosystem. Question 3. Stakeholder feedback indicates a desire to implement a Power Automate flow that automatically extracts customer contact details from incoming emails and adds them to a Dynamics 365 marketing list. The flow will process emails from a shared inbox. What is the most appropriate initial step for a Power Platform functional consultant to ensure regulatory compliance before proceeding with development? Option A. Immediately begin developing the Power Automate flow, assuming the shared inbox is for general business inquiries and therefore does not contain sensitive personal data. Option B. Develop the flow using standard connectors and assume that Microsoft's platform compliance features will automatically ensure regulatory adherence for all data processed. Option C. Proceed with development and inform the stakeholder that they are responsible for ensuring the data processed by the flow is compliant with relevant regulations. Option D. Consult with the organization's Data Protection Officer, DPO, To understand the specific data privacy regulations applicable to customer contact information and assess the need for a data protection impact assessment, DPIA, for this flow. The correct answer is A. Immediately begin developing the Power Automate flow, assuming the shared inbox is for general business inquiries and therefore does not contain sensitive personal data. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate needs and perceived benefits of a new feature with the overarching regulatory obligations for data handling and system security. A functional consultant must not only understand the technical capabilities of Power Platform, but also its implications within a regulated environment, ensuring that proposed solutions adhere to established compliance frameworks. The pressure to deliver quickly can sometimes lead to overlooking critical compliance steps. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the proposed Power Automate flow against relevant data privacy regulations, specifically focusing on how personal data is accessed, processed, and stored. This includes identifying if the flow handles sensitive information, whether consent mechanisms are adequate, and if data minimization principles are being followed. By engaging with the Data Protection Officer, DPO, and conducting a Data Protection Impact Assessment, DPIA, where necessary, the consultant ensures that the solution is designed with privacy by design and by default, aligning with the principles of data protection laws. This proactive engagement is crucial for avoiding potential breaches and ensuring lawful data processing. An incorrect approach that bypasses a formal compliance review, even with the intention of speed, fails to uphold regulatory requirements. This could lead to the processing of personal data in a manner that is not compliant with data protection legislation, potentially resulting in unauthorized access, data breaches, or noncompliance with consent requirements. Another incorrect approach that proceeds without understanding the specific data types involved risks misinterpreting the sensitivity of the information being handled, leading to inadequate security measures or inappropriate data sharing. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to the principle of accountability under data protection laws. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on the user's assurance without independent verification neglects the consultant's professional responsibility to ensure compliance, as the user may not be fully aware of all regulatory obligations or the technical implications of their request. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes compliance and risk assessment. This involves understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to the client's industry and location, performing thorough impact assessments for any proposed solution that handles personal data, and actively seeking guidance from compliance officers or legal counsel when uncertainties arise. The process should be iterative, with compliance checks integrated throughout the solution design and implementation phases, rather than being an afterthought. Question 4. The efficiency study reveals that the current process for synchronizing customer data between an external CRM and Dataverse is slow and resource-intensive, impacting downstream operational workflows. The functional consultant needs to propose an optimized integration strategy, which approach best addresses the efficiency and maintainability requirements while adhering to Power Platform best practices. Option A. Automate manual data export and import operations using scripts to transfer data between the external CRM and Dataverse. Option B. Establish a process to export all Dataverse customer records to an Azure data lake and then integrate from the data lake for all external system interactions. Option C. Develop custom SQL queries to directly access and manipulate the Dataverse database for faster data transfer. Option D. Implement a solution that uses the Dataverse Web API to perform targeted data retrieval and updates in near real time, triggered by events or scheduled intervals. Correct answer is D. Implement a solution that uses the Dataverse Web API to perform targeted data retrieval and updates in near real time, triggered by events or scheduled intervals. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a functional consultant to balance the technical capabilities of the Dataverse API with the need for efficient and compliant data integration. The core challenge lies in selecting an integration method that not only meets functional requirements, but also adheres to best practices for data security, performance, and maintainability, all within the context of the Microsoft Power Platform's intended use and licensing. Careful judgment is required to avoid over-engineering solutions or implementing methods that could lead to performance degradation or increased costs. The correct approach involves leveraging the Dataverse Web API for real-time or near real-time data retrieval and manipulation. This approach is right because the Dataverse Web API is the primary, officially supported interface for interacting with Dataverse data programmatically. It offers a robust, scalable, and secure mechanism for integrating external systems. Using the Web API aligns with Microsoft's recommended practices for Power Platform integration, ensuring compatibility, maintainability, and access to the latest features and security updates. It allows for granular control over data operations, minimizing unnecessary data transfer and processing, which directly contributes to process optimization by reducing latency and resource consumption. This method is ethically sound as it respects the platform's architecture and avoids unsupported or inefficient workarounds. An incorrect approach of directly querying the Dataverse database using SQL is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the Dataverse Web API and is an unsupported method. It poses significant risks to data integrity, security, and platform stability. Microsoft explicitly advises against direct database access for security and architectural reasons. Such an approach could lead to data corruption, unauthorized access, and a violation of the platform's service agreement, creating significant ethical and compliance failures. Another incorrect approach of exporting all Dataverse data to a separate data lake and then integrating from there for every request is inefficient and costly. While a data lake can be useful for analytics and historical data, using it as a primary source for real-time operational integration introduces unnecessary latency and complexity. This approach fails to optimize processes by introducing multiple layers of data transfer and transformation, increasing the potential for data staleness and impacting performance. It also incurs additional infrastructure and processing costs without a clear benefit for the stated efficiency goal. A further incorrect approach of relying solely on manual data export and import processes for integration is highly inefficient and prone to human error. This method is not scalable and does not leverage the automation capabilities inherent in the Power Platform. It fails to meet the objective of process optimization by introducing significant manual effort, increasing the risk of data inconsistencies, and hindering real-time data synchronization, leading to operational inefficiencies and potential compliance issues due to outdated information. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves 1. Understanding the core business requirement and the desired outcome, process optimization. 2. Evaluating the technical capabilities of the platform, specifically the Dataverse API and its integration patterns. 3. Prioritizing officially supported and recommended integration methods that ensure scalability, security, and maintainability. 4. Assessing the performance implications and cost-effectiveness of each potential solution. 5. Considering regulatory and ethical implications, particularly concerning data security and platform compliance. 6. Selecting the solution that best balances functional needs with these critical considerations, favoring robust, API-driven integrations over unsupported or manual methods. Question 5. The monitoring system demonstrates that a Power Platform connector is configured to access customer data from a third-party CRM system to populate a Power BI report. The connector has been granted broad permissions, allowing access to all fields within the CRM, including sensitive personal information that is not directly used in the current report. The organization operates under UK GDPR. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with UK GDPR regarding the connector's data access? Option A. Reconfigure the connector to access only the specific data fields required for the Power BI report, ensuring that sensitive personal information not relevant to the report is excluded. Option B. Implement additional encryption layers on the Power BI report itself to safeguard the sensitive data, without altering the connector's broad access. Option C. Assume that the third-party CRM system's own data protection measures are sufficient to cover the data accessed by the connector. Option D. Proceed with the current configuration, as the connector is a standard integration tool and the data is only being read for reporting purposes. The correct answer is A. Reconfigure the connector to access only the specific data fields required for the Power BI report, ensuring that sensitive personal information not relevant to the report is excluded. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for Power Platform functional consultants, ensuring that data integration solutions comply with data privacy regulations while meeting business needs. The core challenge lies in balancing the desire for comprehensive data access for analytics with the legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive customer information. Misinterpreting or misapplying connector configurations can lead to inadvertent data breaches or noncompliance, resulting in significant reputational damage and potential legal penalties. The consultant must demonstrate a thorough understanding of the data sources, the sensitivity of the data being accessed, and the applicable regulatory framework. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a detailed review of the connector's permissions and data access settings against the specific requirements of the UK GDPR. This means understanding what data the connector is configured to access, whether that access is strictly necessary for the intended business process, and if appropriate safeguards are in place. For instance, if the connector is accessing personal data, the consultant must verify that the data processing is lawful, fair, and transparent, and that the data subject's rights are respected. This includes ensuring that only the minimum necessary data is accessed and that any data transferred or stored is adequately secured. The principle of data minimization and purpose limitation are key tenets of UK GDPR, and the connector configuration must align with these. Incorrect approaches analysis. Configuring the connector with broad, unrestricted access to all available data fields, even those not immediately required for the current business process, is a significant regulatory failure. This violates the principle of data minimization and increases the risk of unauthorized access or processing of personal data, contravening UK GDPR. Another incorrect approach is to assume that because a connector is a standard Microsoft offering, it is inherently compliant without specific configuration review. This overlooks the fact that compliance is dependent on how the connector is implemented and configured within the specific organizational context and for the specific data being accessed. The responsibility lies with the implementer to ensure the configuration aligns with UK GDPR. Finally, prioritizing the speed of implementation over a thorough security and compliance review of the connector's data access permissions is also a failure. While efficiency is important, it cannot come at the expense of regulatory adherence. Rushing the configuration without understanding the implications for data privacy can lead to serious compliance issues. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach. Before configuring any connector, especially those accessing sensitive data, they must 1. Identify the data sources and the type of data involved. 2. Understand the business purpose for accessing this data. 3. Consult the relevant regulatory framework, in this case, UK GDPR. 4. Review the connector's capabilities and configuration options, paying close attention to permissions and data access levels. 5. Configure the connector to access only the minimum data necessary for the stated business purpose. 6. Implement appropriate security measures for data in transit and at rest. 7. Document the configuration choices and the rationale behind them, linking them to compliance requirements. 8. Conduct regular reviews and audits of connector configuration. Question 6. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a critical business process relies on the accurate transformation of customer data from an external source into the Power Platform. The transformation involves standardizing address formats, categorizing customer types based on predefined criteria, and enriching records with publicly available demographic information. The consultant must implement a solution that ensures data integrity, provides an auditable trail of all transformations, and minimizes the risk of manual errors or data corruption, while adhering to data handling regulations. Option A. Utilize an Excel spreadsheet to perform the data transformations manually before importing the processed data into Power Platform. Option B. Implement the data transformation logic directly within the client-side code of a custom Power app, triggered by user actions during data entry. Option C. Rely on manual data correction and validation within Power Apps after an initial, untransformed data import. Option D. Develop a Power Automate flow that orchestrates the data ingestion, applies the necessary transformations using appropriate connectors and expressions, and includes comprehensive error handling and logging mechanisms. The correct answer is D. Develop a Power Automate flow that orchestrates the data ingestion, applies the necessary transformations using appropriate connectors and expressions, and includes comprehensive error handling and logging mechanisms. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for Power Platform functional consultants, ensuring data integrity and compliance during data transformation while adhering to regulatory requirements. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient data processing with the imperative to maintain data accuracy, security, and auditability, all within the context of specific, albeit implied, regulatory frameworks governing data handling. The consultant must select a method that not only achieves the desired data transformation, but also aligns with principles of data governance and potential regulatory oversight. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging Power Automate flows with appropriate data transformation connectors and error handling. This method is preferred because Power Automate provides a robust, auditable, and configurable platform for data manipulation. It allows for the implementation of detailed logging, error notification, and retry mechanisms, which are crucial for maintaining data integrity and demonstrating compliance. The ability to orchestrate complex transformations, integrate with various data sources, and apply business logic in a controlled manner directly supports the principles of data governance and regulatory adherence by ensuring that data is processed consistently and any deviations are identified and addressed. This approach facilitates a clear audit trail of data transformations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing data transformations directly within a Power App's client-side logic is an incorrect approach. This method lacks a robust audit trail, is prone to inconsistencies if the user interface is bypassed or manipulated, and can lead to performance issues. From a regulatory perspective, it makes it difficult to prove that data was transformed according to established rules and can pose security risks if sensitive transformation logic is exposed. Using a simple Excel spreadsheet for data transformation before importing into Power Platform is also an incorrect approach. While seemingly straightforward, this method introduces significant risks of manual error, version control issues, and a lack of auditable process. It is difficult to ensure that the same transformation steps are applied consistently, and it bypasses the structured data governance capabilities of Power Platform, making it challenging to meet compliance requirements for data processing. Relying solely on manual data entry and correction within Power Apps after an initial import is an incorrect approach. This method is highly susceptible to human error, is inefficient for large datasets, and provides no systematic way to ensure that data transformations are applied correctly or consistently. It fails to establish a reliable and auditable process for data manipulation, which is a fundamental requirement for regulatory compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach data transformation challenges by first understanding the specific regulatory context and data governance policies applicable to the data being processed. This involves identifying requirements for data accuracy, security, privacy, and auditability. The chosen solution should then be evaluated based on its ability to meet these requirements through features like robust error handling, logging, version control, and integration with established data governance tools. A structured approach, prioritizing auditable and repeatable processes, is essential for maintaining data integrity and ensuring compliance. Question 7. Stakeholder feedback indicates that a key executive is requesting immediate access to sensitive customer data through a custom Power App, bypassing the standard data access request and approval process, citing an urgent business need. As a Microsoft certified Power Platform Functional Consultant Associate, what is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Inform the executive that their request cannot be fulfilled due to the standard process and suggest they find an alternative method to access the data. Option B. Proceed with building the Power App but delay granting access until a full security audit can be completed, which may take several weeks. Option C. Escalate the request to the appropriate governance committee or data security team for review and approval, while communicating the executive's urgency and the need for a swift decision. Option D. Immediately build the custom Power App and grant the executive access to the data as requested to meet the perceived urgent business need. The correct answer is C. Escalate the request to the appropriate governance committee or data security team for review and approval, while communicating the executive's urgency and the need for a swift decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate needs of a key stakeholder with the broader ethical and regulatory obligations of a Power Platform functional consultant. The consultant must navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure that solutions are implemented responsibly, adhering to established guidelines. Careful judgment is required to avoid compromising data integrity, security, or compliance, even when faced with pressure from influential individuals. The correct approach involves prioritizing the established governance and security protocols over the stakeholders' immediate, potentially unvetted, request. This upholds the principles of responsible data handling and solution development by first understanding the underlying business need and then assessing how to meet it within the existing framework. The consultant demonstrates a commitment to best practices and regulatory compliance. This aligns with the ethical duty to provide solutions that are not only functional but also secure, compliant, and sustainable, thereby protecting the organization from potential risks. An incorrect approach that bypasses established change management and security review processes is professionally unacceptable. This failure to adhere to governance directly contravenes the principles of responsible technology deployment and could lead to security vulnerabilities, data breaches, or non-compliance with internal policies and external regulations. Such an action undermines trust and could have significant legal and financial repercussions for the organization. Another incorrect approach that involves directly implementing the request without proper assessment or documentation is also professionally unsound. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the structured approach necessary for robust solution development. It risks introducing unintended consequences, creating technical debt, and failing to meet the actual, underlying business requirement effectively. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured assessment of any request. This includes understanding the business problem, evaluating the proposed solution against existing governance and security policies, consulting with relevant stakeholders, including IT security and compliance teams if necessary, documenting the decision-making process, and ensuring that any approved changes follow the established change management procedures. Prioritizing ethical conduct, regulatory adherence, and the long-term health of the Power Platform environment is paramount. Question 8. System analysis indicates that a Power Platform solution needs to connect to an Azure SQL database containing sensitive customer financial data. The solution will be accessed by multiple users with varying levels of access requirements. Which approach best adheres to regulatory compliance for data source authentication and authorization? Option A. Relies solely on Azure SQL database firewall rules to restrict access to the database, assuming that only authorized users will be accessing the Power Platform application. Option B. Use a single, highly privileged SQL administrator account for all connections from Power Platform to the Azure SQL database. Option C. Utilize Azure Active Directory, Azure AD service principals, or managed identities to authenticate to Azure SQL database, configuring granular permissions within the database based on user roles defined in Azure AD. Option D. Embed the SQL database connection string, including username and password, directly within the Power Apps configuration settings. The correct answer is C. Utilize Azure Active Directory, Azure AD service principals, or managed identities to authenticate to Azure SQL database, configuring granular permissions within the database based on user roles defined in Azure AD. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient data access with stringent regulatory compliance regarding data security and user authorization. As a Power Platform functional consultant, understanding and implementing appropriate authentication and authorization mechanisms is paramount to protect sensitive information and adhere to data governance principles. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that only authorized users can access specific data sources through the Power Platform, and that the authentication methods used are robust and compliant with relevant regulations. The correct approach involves leveraging Power Platform's built-in connectors and their respective authentication methods, such as OAuth 2.0 or service principals, to securely connect to data sources like Azure SQL database. This approach is correct because it aligns with industry best practices for data security and is implicitly supported by the principles of data protection and access control mandated by regulatory frameworks that govern data handling. By using managed identities or service principals, the solution avoids embedding credentials directly into the application, thereby reducing the risk of credential compromise. This adheres to the principle of least privilege and ensures that access is granted based on defined roles and permissions within the data source itself, which is a fundamental requirement for regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach would be to embed database connection strings with username and password directly within Power Apps or Power Automate flows. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it directly violates principles of secure credential management. Embedding credentials creates a high risk of unauthorized access if the application or its configuration is compromised. Regulatory frameworks, such as those related to data privacy and security, universally condemn the practice of hard-coding sensitive credentials. Another incorrect approach would be to use a single, highly privileged service account for all data source connections across multiple Power Platform environments. This fails to implement the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of secure system design and regulatory compliance. If this single account's credentials were compromised, it would grant attackers broad access to all connected data sources, leading to a severe data breach. Furthermore, it makes auditing and accountability difficult, as it's impossible to determine which specific user or process performed an action. A third incorrect approach would be to rely solely on network-level security, e.g., firewall rules, to protect the data source, without implementing granular user-level authentication and authorization within the Power Platform solution. While network security is important, it is insufficient on its own. Regulatory requirements typically demand authentication and authorization at the application and data access layers to ensure that even if the network perimeter is breached, unauthorized users cannot access sensitive data. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment of the data being accessed and the potential impact of a breach. This should be followed by an evaluation of available authentication and authorization mechanisms within Power Platform and the target data source, prioritizing solutions that support secure credential management, role-based access control, and auditing capabilities. Adherence to the principle of least privilege and the use of managed identities or service principles should be the default choice. Consulting relevant data governance policies and regulatory guidelines specific to the industry and jurisdiction is crucial before implementing any solution. Question 9. Compliance review shows that a financial services organization is developing a model-driven app to manage customer onboarding and account details. The app will contain highly sensitive personal and financial information. The functional consultant is tasked with designing the security model to ensure compliance with data protection regulations. Which approach best addresses the risk of unauthorized access to sensitive customer data? Option A. Configure row-level security to restrict access to specific customer records, but allow all users to view all fields within any record they are permitted to access. Option B. Implement a security model that strictly enforces the principle of least privilege by configuring granular security roles and field-level security profile to restrict access to specific tables, records, and fields based on user job functions. Option C. Assign a single, broad security role to all users that grants access to all customer data tables and fields to simplify user management and ensure everyone has the information they need. Option D. Disable all security roles within the Power Platform and rely solely on the organization's external identity provider for authentication and authorization. The correct answer is B. Implement a security model that strictly enforces the principle of least privilege by configuring granular security roles and field-level security profiles to restrict access to specific tables, records, and fields based on user job functions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between enabling business agility and ensuring robust data security and privacy, particularly when dealing with sensitive customer information within a regulated industry. A functional consultant must balance the need for efficient data access and user experience with the strict requirements of data protection laws. Misinterpreting or inadequately addressing these requirements can lead to significant compliance breaches, reputational damage, and financial penalties. Careful judgment is required to select a solution that is both functional and compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a security model that strictly adheres to the principle of least privilege. This means that users are granted only the minimum permissions necessary to perform their job functions. For model-driven apps, this translates to configuring security roles and field-level security profiles that precisely define access to specific tables, records, and even individual fields within those records. This granular control ensures that sensitive customer data is only accessible by authorized personnel, directly aligning with data protection regulations that mandate safeguarding personal information and preventing unauthorized access or disclosure. This approach proactively mitigates risks associated with data breaches and unauthorized data manipulation. Incorrect approaches analysis, granting broad access to all users by assigning a single, overly permissive security role fails to implement the principle of least privilege. This creates a significant security vulnerability, as users who do not require access to sensitive customer data can view or modify it, leading to potential data breaches and violations of data privacy regulations. Implementing row-level security without considering field-level security leaves sensitive data fields exposed even if access to the entire record is restricted. This means that while a user might be prevented from seeing certain customer records, they could still see specific sensitive fields within records they are permitted to access, violating data protection principles. Disabling all security roles and relying solely on external authentication mechanisms is a fundamental misunderstanding of how security is managed within the Power Platform. While external authentication is a component of security, it does not replace the need for granular authorization within the application itself to control access to specific data and functionalities. This approach leaves the application and its data unprotected from internal misuse. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such scenarios by first identifying the specific data sensitivity and regulatory requirements applicable to the client's industry and jurisdiction. This involves understanding data protection laws and best practices. Next, they should map these requirements to the security features available within the Power Platform, focusing on role-based security, record-level security, and field-level security. A risk-based assessment should then guide the configuration, prioritizing the principle of least privilege. Regular audits and reviews of security configurations are essential to maintain compliance and adapt to evolving threats and regulations. Question 10. Operational review demonstrates that users frequently enter incorrect data into the order quantity field on the sales order form, leading to downstream processing errors. Additionally, the discount percentage field should only be visible and editable if the customer tier is premium, and a default discount of 5% should be applied to premium tier orders when the discount percentage field is left blank. Which approach should be implemented to address these requirements effectively within Dataverse? Option A. Develop a Power Automate flow that triggers on sales order record save to validate order quantity, and use conditional logic within the flow to manage the visibility and default value of discount percentage. Option B. Write custom JavaScript code to be deployed on the sales order form to manage the visibility, editability, and default values of discount percentage, and add client-side validation for order quantity. Option C. Implement Dataverse business rules to enforce data validation on order quantity, conditionally show and enable discount percentage based on customer tier, and set a default value for discount percentage when applicable. Option D. Create a custom plugin to handle all validation and conditional logic for order quantity and discount percentage on the server side. Correct answer is C. Implement Dataverse business rules to enforce data validation on order quantity, conditionally show and enable discount percentage based on customer tier, and set a default value for discount percentage when applicable. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in Power Platform implementations, where business logic needs to be enforced consistently across different user interactions and data entry points. The professional challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate and maintainable mechanism for enforcing these business rules within Dataverse, ensuring data integrity and a seamless user experience without introducing unnecessary complexity or performance issues. The need for a robust and scalable solution that adheres to best practices for Power Platform development is paramount. Correct approach analysis. Implementing the business logic using Dataverse business rules is the correct approach. Business rules in Dataverse are designed specifically for client-side and server-side data validation, form manipulation, showing/hiding fields, setting field values, making fields read-only, and setting default values. They are declarative, meaning they can be configured without writing code, making them easier to manage and update by functional consultants. When applied to a table, business rules execute automatically based on user actions or data changes, ensuring consistent enforcement of logic across all forms and views that interact with that table. This approach directly addresses the requirement for real-time validation and conditional field behavior, promoting data quality and user efficiency. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the logic solely as a Power Automate flow workflow without considering business rules is an incorrect approach for this specific scenario. While Power Automate can be used to automate processes and enforce logic, it is generally more suited for asynchronous operations or complex multi-step processes that span across different services. For real-time, client-side form interactions and immediate data validation, relying solely on a Power Automate flow can lead to a less responsive user experience, as the flow might not trigger or complete instantaneously. Furthermore, business rules offer a more direct and declarative way to handle form-level logic, making them more maintainable for this type of requirement. Implementing the logic as a custom plugin is also an incorrect approach for this scenario. Plugins are powerful server-side code components that offer extensive customization capabilities. However, they require developer expertise and are typically used for complex business logic that cannot be achieved through declarative tools like business rules or Power Automate. For the described requirements of real-time field validation, showing /hiding fields, and setting default values based on conditions, business rules provide a more efficient and maintainable solution that aligns with the role of a functional consultant. Over-engineering with plugins for simpler logic increases development time, cost, and maintenance overhead. Implementing the logic as client-side JavaScript directly on forms is an incorrect approach. While JavaScript can achieve similar results, it is generally discouraged for core business logic enforcement in Dataverse. Business rules provide a declarative and more manageable alternative that is less prone to errors and easier to update by functional consultants. Relying on custom JavaScript can lead to maintenance challenges, especially as the platform evolves, and it bypasses the built-in declarative capabilities of Dataverse that are designed for these types of requirements. Professional reasoning. When faced with implementing business logic in Dataverse, a functional consultant should first evaluate the use of declarative tools like business rules. These tools are designed for common scenarios like data validation, form manipulation, and conditional field behavior, offering a low-code/no-code approach that enhances maintainability and reduces development time. If business rules are insufficient, the next consideration would be Power Automate for asynchronous or cross-service automation. Custom plugins and client-side JavaScript should be reserved for highly complex or unique requirements that cannot be met by declarative tools or Power Automate, ensuring that the chosen solution is the most appropriate, efficient, and maintainable for the given business need. Question 11. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a company needs to provide secure and reliable access for Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate to an on-premises SQL Server database. The company has a robust on-premises network infrastructure, but wants to avoid exposing the database directly to the internet. What is the most appropriate data gateway configuration to meet these requirements? Option A. Expose the on-premises SQL server directly to the internet. Option B. Implement a standard mode on-premises data gateway. Option C. Configure a virtual network gateway for direct cloud to on-premises connectivity without an on-premises data gateway. Option D. Implement a personal mode on-premises data gateway. The correct answer is B. Implement a standard mode on-premises data gateway. Explanation. This scenario presents a common professional challenge for a Power Platform functional consultant, balancing the need for secure and efficient data access with the practicalities of on-premises data sources. The challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate data gateway configuration that meets both technical requirements and regulatory compliance, without introducing unnecessary complexity or security risks. Careful judgment is required to ensure data integrity, user access, and adherence to Microsoft's recommended practices for Power Platform integration. The correct approach involves implementing a standard mode on-premises data gateway. This method is the recommended and most secure way to connect Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate to on-premises data sources. It establishes a secure tunnel for data transfer, ensuring that data remains within the organization's network perimeter when necessary. This aligns with general data security best practices and the principles of least privilege, as it doesn't expose internal systems directly to the internet. Microsoft's documentation and guidance for Power Platform consistently advocate for this configuration for on-premises data access, emphasizing its security and reliability. Implementing a personal mode on-premises data gateway is an incorrect approach because it is designed for individual use and is not suitable for enterprise-level data access. It lacks the robustness and centralized management required for a production environment and can lead to security vulnerabilities if not managed meticulously. Furthermore, it does not meet the requirements for shared access and scalability that a functional consultant would typically need to address. Exposing the on-premises SQL server directly to the internet without any gateway is a fundamentally incorrect and highly insecure approach. This bypasses all security measures and regulatory controls designed to protect sensitive data. It would violate numerous data protection regulations and ethical standards by making the data vulnerable to unauthorized access, breaches, and misuse. This approach demonstrates a severe lack of understanding of secure data integration principles and regulatory compliance. Configuring a virtual network gateway for direct cloud-to-on-premises connectivity without an on-premises data gateway is also an incorrect approach in this context. While virtual network gateways are crucial for hybrid cloud scenarios, they are not the primary mechanism for Power Platform services to access on-premises data. The on-premises data gateway acts as the intermediary, translating requests from the Power Platform services into a format that the on-premises data source can understand and securely returning the data. Relying solely on a virtual network gateway would likely result in connectivity issues and would not leverage the intended Power Platform integration architecture. The professional decision-making process for such situations involves understanding the core requirements, secure on-premises data access for Power Platform, evaluating available solutions against these requirements, considering security implications, and adhering to vendor best practices and relevant regulatory frameworks. A functional consultant must prioritize secure, scalable, and maintainable solutions that align with the organization's overall IT strategy and compliance obligations. Question 12. The monitoring system demonstrates a critical need for field technicians to access and update critical asset data via a mobile application, even in remote locations with intermittent or no network connectivity. The organization operates within a jurisdiction with strict data privacy and security regulations, requiring all sensitive asset information to be protected at all times. With a clear audit trail of all data access and modifications, the functional consultant must propose a solution using the Power Platform mobile app that balances operational efficiency with regulatory compliance. Option A. Utilize the Power App's mobile app's default offline settings without any specific security configurations or access controls, assuming the inherent security of the platform is sufficient. Option B. Develop a custom solution that bypasses standard Power Apps authentication and data synchronization mechanisms to allow for unrestricted, immediate data access in offline scenarios. Option C. Configure the Power Apps mobile app to utilize offline profiles and data synchronization, coupled with Azure Active Directory for user authentication and role-based access control to manage data visibility and modification permissions. Option D. Implement the Power Apps mobile app with offline capabilities disabled by default, requiring a stable internet connection for all data access and updates to ensure data is always in transit securely. The correct answer is C. Configure the Power Apps mobile app to utilize offline profiles and data synchronization, coupled with Azure Active Directory for user authentication and role-based access control to manage data visibility and modification permissions. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a functional consultant to balance the technical capabilities of the Power Platform with the specific, often nuanced, regulatory requirements governing data handling and user access within a regulated industry. The core challenge lies in ensuring that the mobile app's functionalities, while enhancing user productivity, do not inadvertently create compliance risks. Careful judgment is required to interpret and apply these regulations to the practical implementation of a mobile solution. The correct approach involves leveraging the Power Apps mobile app's offline capabilities and data synchronization features, combined with robust security configurations, to meet the regulatory demands. This approach is right because it directly addresses the need for data availability in disconnected environments while maintaining data integrity and security, which are paramount in regulated industries. Specifically, by configuring offline profiles and data synchronization rules, the app can store and process sensitive data locally when connectivity is lost, and then securely synchronize it when a connection is re-established. This aligns with regulations that may require data to be accessible for critical operations, but also mandate that data remains protected and auditable, even in transient states. The use of Azure Active Directory for authentication and role-based access control further ensures that only authorized personnel can access specific data and functionalities, adhering to principles of data privacy and security mandated by regulatory frameworks. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the default offline capabilities without proper configuration or security hardening fails to meet regulatory standards. This is because default settings may not provide the necessary granular control over data access or the required level of encryption for sensitive information, leading to potential data breaches or unauthorized access. Another incorrect approach that involves disabling offline capabilities entirely while seemingly prioritizing security would render the mobile app impractical for field operations where connectivity is unreliable, thus failing to meet the business need and potentially violating regulations that mandate operational continuity. A third incorrect approach that bypasses standard authentication mechanisms to simplify user access creates significant security vulnerabilities and directly contravenes regulations requiring strong authentication and audit trails for data access. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the client's industry and geographical location. This should be followed by a detailed assessment of the business requirements and the technical capabilities of the Power Platform. The process then involves mapping these requirements to specific Power Apps features, prioritizing security and compliance at every step. Prototyping and rigorous testing, including user acceptance testing and security audits, are crucial to validate that the solution meets both functional and regulatory obligations before deployment. Question 13. Upon reviewing the requirements for a new internal sales management system that needs to centralize customer data, track sales opportunities, and streamline the lead-to-close process for a team of 50 sales representatives, which type of Power App would be the most appropriate and efficient solution to recommend, considering the need for a structured interface and robust data management? Option A, a combination of Canvas and model-driven apps. Option B, a Canvas app. Option C, a model-driven app. Option D, a Power Pages site. The correct answer is C, a model-driven app. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for Power Platform functional consultants, selecting the most appropriate Power Apps type to meet diverse business needs while adhering to licensing and user experience best practices. The challenge lies in balancing functional requirements with technical constraints and the inherent differences in how Canvas, model-driven, and portal apps are built and consumed. Careful judgment is required to avoid recommending a solution that is overly complex, expensive, or difficult for end users to adopt. The correct approach involves recommending a model-driven app. Model-driven apps are ideal for complex business processes and data-intensive scenarios where a structured, form-based user interface is paramount. They leverage the Common Data Service, now Dataverse, as their data foundation, providing robust data integrity, security, and scalability. This aligns with the need for a centralized system to manage customer data and streamline sales processes, ensuring a consistent and controlled user experience. Regulatory compliance, in the context of Microsoft Power Platform, often relates to data governance, security, and access controls, which are inherently strong in model-driven apps due to their Dataverse integration. Recommending a Canvas app for this scenario would be an incorrect approach. While Canvas apps offer maximum UI flexibility, they are typically better suited for task-specific applications or scenarios where a highly customized user experience is the primary driver. Building a comprehensive customer management system with complex relationships and workflows using a Canvas app would likely result in a more time-consuming and costly development effort, potentially leading to inconsistencies in data entry and user experience compared to a model-driven app. This could indirectly impact compliance by increasing the risk of data errors or unauthorized access if security models are not meticulously implemented. Suggesting a Power Pages, formerly Power Apps Portals solution would also be an incorrect approach. Power Pages are designed for external-facing websites that allow external users, customers, partners, to interact with an organization's data. While they can be used to manage customer information, their primary purpose is not for internal sales team operations. Using Power Pages for an internal sales process would be a misapplication of the technology, leading to unnecessary complexity and potentially exposing sensitive internal data to external access if not configured with extreme care, which is a significant regulatory and security risk. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a thorough understanding of the client's business processes, data requirements, user roles, and desired outcomes. It requires evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of each Power Apps type against these requirements. A structured approach would involve 1. Requirements gathering. Deeply understand the business problem, data entities, user workflows, and any compliance or security mandates. 2. Solution mapping. Map these requirements to the capabilities of Canvas apps, model-driven apps, and Power Pages. 3. Feasibility and scalability assessment. Consider the complexity of development, ongoing maintenance, and future scalability. 4. User experience and adoption. Evaluate how each solution will impact end-user productivity and adoption rates. 5. Licensing and cost considerations. Understand the licensing implications of each choice. 6. Recommendation and justification. Present a clear recommendation with a strong justification, explaining why the chosen approach best meets the client's needs and adheres to any relevant guidelines. Question 14. Benchmark analysis indicates that a client requires a Power App to display and manage data from multiple sources, including SharePoint lists, Excel files stored in OneDrive for Business, an on-premises SQL Server database, and their Dynamics 365 customer engagement instance. The primary concern is to ensure data security, maintainability, and adherence to organizational data governance policies. Which approach best meets these requirements? Option A. Directly embed database connection strings and API keys within the Power Apps formulas for all data sources to simplify initial setup. Option B. Rely on a third-party data integration tool that promises faster data synchronization without performing a security audit of the tool itself. Option C. Utilize the native Power Platform connectors for SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, SQL Server, and Dynamics 365, configuring them with appropriate authentication and authorization settings. Option D. Develop custom code using C# and Azure functions to extract data from each source, and then import it into a separate Azure SQL database, which the Power App will then connect to. The correct answer is C. Utilize the native Power Platform connectors for SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, SQL Server, and Dynamics 365, configuring them with appropriate authentication and authorization settings. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for Power Platform functional consultants, integrating diverse data sources while adhering to data governance and security best practices. The professional challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate and secure method for data connectivity, ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations and organizational policies, which are paramount in the Microsoft ecosystem. Misjudging these requirements can lead to data breaches, compliance violations, and inefficient system performance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the native connectors provided within Power Platform, specifically those designed for secure and efficient integration with services like SharePoint, Excel Online, SQL Server, and Dynamics 365. These connectors are built with security protocols and data handling best practices in mind, often supporting features like OAuth for authentication and role-based access control. For instance, using the SharePoint connector ensures that data access is governed by SharePoint's existing permissions, aligning with the principle of least privilege. Similarly, the Dynamics 365 connector utilizes its robust security model. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible as it prioritizes data security, compliance with Microsoft's own service agreements and data handling guidelines, and promotes maintainability and scalability of the Power Platform solution. Incorrect approaches analysis. Using custom code or third-party integration tools without thoroughly vetting their security implications and compliance with data governance policies is an incorrect approach. Such methods can bypass built-in security mechanisms, introduce vulnerabilities, and may not adhere to the data handling standards expected within the Microsoft ecosystem. For example, directly exposing database credentials in custom code for SQL Server integration creates a significant security risk, violating principles of secure credential management. Similarly, relying on unverified third-party connectors for SharePoint or Dynamics 365 could expose sensitive data to unauthorized access or misuse, failing to uphold data privacy and integrity. These approaches often lead to regulatory noncompliance and increased risk of data breaches. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing solutions that align with established security frameworks and organizational policies. When connecting to data sources, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the data source and its sensitivity. 2. Evaluating available Power Platform connectors for that source. 3. Assessing the security features and compliance certifications of the chosen connector. 4. Verifying that the chosen method adheres to organizational data governance policies and relevant privacy regulations. If native connectors are insufficient, a thorough security review of any custom or third-party alternatives is mandatory before implementation. Question 15. The audit findings indicate that a model-driven app designed to manage sensitive customer financial data has been integrated with a third-party analytics platform without a formal security review or verification of the platform's compliance certifications. The integration allows for the direct transfer of customer data. As the Power Platform functional consultant, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to address this finding? Option A. Inform the business stakeholders of the audit finding and suggest they approve the continued use of the integration while a review is pending, emphasizing the business benefits. Option B. Continue the integration as it provides significant business value, and document the integration in the system's architecture diagram for future reference, assuming the third-party platform is reputable. Option C. Immediately disable the integration and initiate a comprehensive review of the third-party platform's security and compliance documentation, engaging the organization's security and legal teams to assess the risk and determine appropriate remediation steps. Option D. Proceed with implementing additional access controls within the model-driven app to restrict data access to only essential personnel and monitor the data flow for any anomalies. The correct answer is C. Immediately disable the integration and initiate a comprehensive review of the third-party platform's security and compliance documentation, engaging the organization's security and legal teams to assess the risk and determine appropriate remediation steps. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential breach of data privacy and security protocols due to the integration of a model-driven app with an external, unverified third-party service. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the functional benefits of integration with the critical responsibility of safeguarding sensitive customer data. The consultant must navigate the complexities of Power Platform's integration capabilities while adhering to strict regulatory frameworks governing data handling and security. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any integration, even if technically feasible, does not expose the organization to undue risk or violate compliance mandates. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and adherence to established data governance policies before implementing any integration. This includes verifying the security certifications and compliance posture of the third-party service, ensuring data is encrypted both in transit and at rest, and implementing access controls that align with the principle of least privilege. This approach is right because it prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical data stewardship. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of data protection regulations that mandate organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure the security of personal data. By conducting due diligence on the third-party service and ensuring robust security controls, the consultant upholds their professional duty to protect sensitive information and avoid unauthorized access or disclosure, thereby preventing potential regulatory penalties and reputational damage. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the integration based solely on the perceived functional benefits or a lack of explicit prohibition in the current documentation. This failure to conduct due diligence on the third-party service's security and compliance posture is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. demonstrates a disregard for data protection principles and could lead to a breach of data privacy regulations, resulting in substantial fines and legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach would be to implement the integration without adequate access controls or data encryption. This exposes the data to unauthorized access and potential compromise, violating the fundamental ethical obligation to protect customer information and the legal requirements of data protection laws. Such an oversight can lead to severe consequences, including data breaches, loss of customer trust, and regulatory enforcement actions. A third incorrect approach would be to bypass the organization's established data governance and security review processes, assuming the consultant has the authority to make such decisions independently. This undermines internal controls and governance frameworks designed to mitigate risks. It is an ethical failure to circumvent established procedures that are in place to ensure compliance and security, and it can lead to a breakdown in organizational oversight and accountability. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk-based approach. First, identify the integration requirement and its potential benefits. Second, assess the associated risks, particularly concerning data security, privacy, and regulatory compliance. Third, consult relevant internal policies, data governance frameworks, and legal counsel. Fourth, conduct thorough due diligence on any external services involved. Fifth, implement appropriate technical and organizational safeguards. Finally, document the decision-making process and the implemented controls for auditability and future reference. Question 16. Examination of the data shows that a client wants to build a Power App to manage customer feedback. During the discovery phase, it becomes apparent that some of this feedback contains sensitive personal information. The client asks if the Power App can be configured to automatically pull all customer feedback from various sources, including potentially unsecured email inboxes, and display it directly within the app for review, without requiring specific user permissions for each source. As a Power Platform functional consultant, how should you respond to ensure compliance and ethical practice? Option A. Suggest that the client first secure all their email inboxes and data sources before proceeding with the Power App development, as the consultant cannot be responsible for data security issues outside of the Power App itself. Option B. Assure the client that Power Apps is a powerful tool and you can find a way to integrate all feedback sources, including unsecured emails, to display the data directly in the app, as the primary goal is to centralize information. Option C. Explain that Power Apps can be configured to connect to various data sources. Direct access to sensitive personal information from unsecured sources without proper authorization or compliant data connectors is not advisable and may violate data protection regulations. Recommend exploring secure and compliant methods for data integration. Option D. State that Power Apps is designed for internal business processes and is not intended for handling sensitive personal data from unsecured sources, and therefore, this request cannot be fulfilled. The correct answer is C. Explain that Power Apps can be configured to connect to various data sources, but direct access to sensitive personal information from unsecured sources without proper authorization or compliant data connectors is not advisable and may violate data protection regulations. Recommend exploring secure and compliant methods for data integration. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the functional consultant's responsibility to deliver a solution with the ethical obligation to ensure data privacy and compliance with relevant regulations. The consultant must exercise careful judgment to avoid misrepresenting the capabilities of Power Apps or leading the client to believe it can perform actions that would violate data protection principles. The correct approach involves clearly communicating the limitations of Power Apps regarding direct access to sensitive personal data without proper authorization or integration with compliant data sources. This aligns with the principle of transparency and honesty in professional dealings. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of data protection regulations by emphasizing that while Power Apps can display and interact with data, it does not inherently possess the authority to bypass existing security and privacy controls. The consultant's role is to guide the client towards compliant solutions, which might involve configuring Power Apps to connect to data sources that are already secured and governed according to regulations. This proactive stance prevents potential data breaches and ensures the client's solution remains within legal and ethical boundaries. An incorrect approach would be to imply that Power Apps can directly access and manipulate any data it encounters, regardless of its sensitivity or the user's permissions. This misrepresents the platform's capabilities and, more importantly, could lead the client to implement a solution that violates data privacy laws by assuming unauthorized access. Such an approach fails to uphold the professional duty of care and could result in significant legal and reputational damage for both the consultant and the client. Another incorrect approach is to suggest that the consultant can find a way to access the data without explicitly stating the need for proper authorization or compliant data connectors. This implies a willingness to circumvent established security protocols, which is ethically unsound and likely illegal. It also demonstrates a lack of understanding of the fundamental principles of data governance and security. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to dismiss the client's concerns about data privacy and proceed with a solution that ignores these considerations. This demonstrates a disregard for regulatory requirements and ethical responsibilities, prioritizing project completion over client well-being and legal compliance. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding the client's requirements and the nature of the data involved. 2. Thoroughly understanding the capabilities and limitations of the technology being proposed, Power Apps in this case. 3. Identifying potential regulatory and ethical implications, particularly concerning data privacy. 4. Communicating transparently with the client about what is technically feasible and legally permissible. 5. Recommending solutions that are both functional and compliant, guiding the client towards best practices for data security and privacy. 6. Documenting all discussions and decisions related to data handling and compliance. Question 17. Assessment of the most effective Canvas app navigation and screen design strategy for a Power Platform solution intended for a broad user base, including individuals with varying technical proficiencies and potential accessibility needs, considering the need for intuitive user journeys and adherence to modern application design principles. Option A. Prioritize a visually striking and minimalist design, relying on subtle animations and gesture-based interactions to guide users through the app. Option B. Implement a consistent, clearly labeled navigation structure using standard UI elements like a top menu bar or a side navigation pane, ensuring sufficient contrast and tappable areas for all interactive elements. Option C. Focus primarily on the speed of feature implementation, assuming users will adapt to any navigation system provided. Option D. Utilize a highly customized and unique navigation metaphor that deviates significantly from common application patterns to create a distinctive user experience. The correct answer is B. Implement a consistent, clearly labeled navigation structure using standard UI elements like a top menu bar or a side navigation pane, ensuring sufficient contrast and tappable areas for all interactive elements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the functional consultant must balance user experience and efficient navigation within a Canvas app against the need to adhere to established accessibility guidelines. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that the app is not only functional for the majority of users, but also usable by individuals with disabilities, which is a critical aspect of modern application development and compliance. Careful judgment is required to select navigation patterns that are intuitive, visually clear, and compatible with assistive technologies. The correct approach involves designing a navigation structure that prioritizes clear labeling, consistent placement of navigation elements, and the use of standard navigation patterns like a top-level menu or a side navigation pane. This approach is justified by the principles of inclusive design and the implicit regulatory expectation, within the context of Microsoft's product ecosystem, to build applications that are accessible. While specific U.S. regulations like the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, or Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act are not explicitly mentioned for this exam's jurisdiction, the underlying ethical and professional standard is to create solutions that are usable by the widest possible audience. Microsoft's own accessibility guidelines and best practices for Power Platform development strongly advocate for these principles, making them the de facto standard for functional consultants. An incorrect approach that relies solely on visual appeal without considering navigation clarity fails to meet the needs of users who may have cognitive impairments or rely on screen readers. This overlooks the fundamental requirement for an application to be understandable and navigable by all. Another incorrect approach that uses unconventional or hidden navigation elements, such as gestures or context-sensitive menus that are not clearly indicated, creates significant barriers for users with motor impairments or those who are unfamiliar with the application's specific design. This directly contravenes the goal of creating an intuitive and accessible user experience. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed of development over thorough testing of navigation with various user profiles, including those with disabilities, demonstrates a lack of professional diligence and an abdication of responsibility to deliver a robust and inclusive solution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a user-centric design methodology. This begins with understanding the target audience and their potential needs, including accessibility requirements. During the design phase, functional consultants should actively consider established navigation patterns and accessibility best practices. Prototyping and user testing, with diverse user groups, are crucial steps to validate the effectiveness and usability of the chosen navigation design. Adherence to Microsoft's Power Platform best practices and a commitment to inclusive design principles should guide all decisions. Question 18. Which approach would be most effective for a Power Platform functional consultant to implement real-time data validation for user input in a Canvas app, ensuring immediate feedback to the user and maintaining data integrity before submission? Option A. Utilize the on-change property of input controls to trigger validation formulas and display notifications to the user. Option B. Implement all validation logic within the on-select property of the submit button. Option C. Use the on-visible property of the screen to check the validity of all input fields whenever the screen is displayed. Option D. Conditionally set the display mode property of controls using complex nested if statements based on the state of multiple fields. Correct answer is A. Utilize the on-change property of input controls to trigger validation formulas and display notifications to the user. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for Power Platform functional consultants, ensuring that user interactions within a Canvas app adhere to data entry standards and business logic without compromising user experience or data integrity. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for robust validation with the desire for an intuitive and efficient application. Incorrectly implemented formulas can lead to data corruption, user frustration, and ultimately, a failure to meet business requirements, potentially impacting compliance with internal data governance policies. The correct approach involves leveraging the on-change property of input controls to trigger formula execution immediately after a user modifies a field. This allows for real-time feedback and validation. For instance, using a formula like if is blank, text input 1, text notify field cannot be empty. Notification type, error, if len text input 1, text 50 notify field exceeds maximum character limit. Notification type, error, update context var valid field 1, true. On the on-change property of a text input control provides immediate validation. This approach is professionally sound because it proactively addresses potential data quality issues at the point of entry, aligning with principles of data governance and the need for accurate reporting. It also enhances user experience by providing instant feedback, allowing users to correct errors before submitting data. This proactive validation is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the data stored in the underlying data sources, which is a core responsibility of a functional consultant. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the on-select property of a submit button to perform all validation. While this will eventually catch errors, it delays feedback to the user, potentially leading to multiple incorrect submissions or a frustrating experience where users are unaware of errors until the very end of a process. This failure to provide timely feedback can lead to data quality issues and increased support overhead. Another incorrect approach would be to implement complex, nested if statements directly within the display mode property of a control to conditionally enable or disable it based on multiple field validations. While this might prevent submission of invalid data, it doesn't provide the user with clear, actionable feedback about why a control is disabled or what needs to be corrected. This lack of transparency can be confusing and inefficient for users. A further incorrect approach would be to use the onVisible property of a screen to perform validation checks on all fields. This is inefficient as it would reevaluate all fields every time the screen becomes visible, even if no data has changed, and it doesn't provide immediate feedback as the user is interacting with the fields. The professional decision-making process should prioritize user experience and data integrity. This involves understanding the user's workflow and identifying critical data points that require validation. By implementing real-time validation using the onChange property, consultants can ensure data quality from the outset, reduce errors, and provide a more intuitive application experience, thereby meeting business objectives and adhering to best practices in application development. Question 19. Implementation of a new customer feedback canvas app for a retail company requires collecting customer names, email addresses, purchase history, and product ratings. The sales team is eager to launch quickly and suggests collecting all available customer data from the CRM to enrich the feedback, even if not strictly necessary for the feedback analysis itself. As the Power Platform functional consultant, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to designing this Canvas app? Option A. Design the Canvas app to collect customer names, email addresses, and product ratings without explicitly informing users about what data is being collected or how it will be used, assuming consent is implied by their use of the app. Option B. Design the Canvas app to collect customer names, email addresses, and product ratings, but store all collected data in a readily accessible, unencrypted spreadsheet within the Power Platform environment for ease of access by the sales team. Option C. Design the Canvas app to collect only the customer name, email address, and product ratings directly relevant to the feedback. Implement robust access controls to the app and ensure data is stored securely within the Power Platform environment, with clear data retention policies. Option D. Design the Canvas app to collect all available customer data from the CRM, including purchase history and any other demographic information, to provide the richest possible dataset for analysis, as requested by the sales team. The correct answer is C. Design the Canvas app to collect only the customer name, email address, and product ratings directly relevant to the feedback. Implement robust access controls to the app and ensure data is stored securely within the Power Platform environment, with clear data retention policies. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate business need for a functional application with the ethical obligation to protect sensitive user data. The consultant must navigate potential conflicts between stakeholder demands and regulatory compliance, ensuring that the developed solution adheres to established data privacy principles. Careful judgment is required to avoid shortcuts that could lead to significant legal and reputational damage. The correct approach involves designing the Canvas app with data security and privacy as foundational principles from the outset. This means implementing robust access controls, encrypting sensitive data where appropriate, and ensuring that only necessary data fields are collected and displayed. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are core tenets of data protection regulations. By proactively building these safeguards into the application, the consultant upholds their professional responsibility to develop secure and compliant solutions, thereby protecting both the organization and its users. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over security by collecting all available data fields without a clear business justification fails to adhere to the principle of data minimization. This could lead to the unnecessary exposure of sensitive information, increasing the risk of a data breach and violating data protection laws. Another incorrect approach that involves storing sensitive user data in an unencrypted format within the Canvas app or its connected data sources creates a significant security vulnerability. This directly contravenes the requirement for appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure data security, leaving the data susceptible to unauthorized access and misuse. A further incorrect approach that overlooks the need for user consent for data collection and processing, or fails to provide clear privacy notices, violates transparency requirements. Users have a right to know how their data is being collected, used, and protected, and a failure to inform them is an ethical and regulatory breach. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape and the specific data protection requirements applicable to the project. This involves identifying sensitive data, assessing potential risks, and designing solutions that incorporate privacy by design and security by design principles. When faced with pressure to compromise on these principles, professionals should clearly articulate the risks and regulatory implications to stakeholders, advocating for a compliant and ethical solution. Question 20. Governance review demonstrates that a proposed Power Platform solution, intended to streamline customer onboarding, utilizes a data connector that, while efficient, has not been formally vetted against the organization's data classification policy for handling sensitive customer information. The business unit is pushing for rapid deployment. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Power Platform functional consultant? Option A. Implement the solution using the connector, but instruct the business unit to manually anonymize all sensitive data before input. Option B. Deploy the solution and rely on the business unit's assurance that they will manage data security appropriately without further technical oversight. Option C. Immediately halt the deployment and initiate a formal review of the data connector's compliance with the data classification policy and relevant regulations before any further progress. Option D. Proceed with the deployment as requested by the business unit, with a plan to address data governance concerns post-launch. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the deployment as requested by the business unit, with a plan to address data governance concerns post-launch. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge where a Power Platform functional consultant must balance the immediate business need for a solution with the long-term implications of data security and compliance. The consultant has identified a potential shortcut that could expedite delivery but carries significant risks. The challenge lies in navigating the ethical imperative to protect sensitive data against the pressure to deliver quickly, requiring careful judgment and adherence to established governance principles. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves prioritizing the established data governance policies and security protocols. This means thoroughly investigating the proposed solution's compliance with all relevant regulations and internal policies before implementation. If the proposed solution, even if seemingly efficient, violates these established guidelines, it must be rejected or modified to ensure compliance. This approach upholds the consultant's ethical responsibility to protect sensitive data and maintain the integrity of the organization's compliance posture. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data privacy, e.g., GDPR if the jurisdiction were the UK, or similar principles in US regulations concerning sensitive data, mandate that data handling practices must be secure and compliant. Adhering to these principles is not optional. It is a fundamental requirement of professional conduct. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that bypasses established data governance policies to expedite the solution, even with the intention of addressing compliance later, is professionally unacceptable. This directly violates the principle of security by design and privacy by design, which are foundational in modern data protection regulations. Such an action creates immediate vulnerabilities and exposes the organization to significant legal, financial, and reputational risks, demonstrates a disregard for the established regulatory framework and ethical obligations. Another incorrect approach would be to proceed with the solution without fully understanding the data classification and its implications. Ignorance of the data's sensitivity or the regulatory requirements governing its use is not a defense. A functional consultant has a professional duty to ascertain these details and ensure the solution aligns with them. Failing to do so constitutes a breach of professional responsibility and regulatory noncompliance. Finally, an approach that relies solely on the user's assurance of data handling without independent verification or adherence to documented policies is also flawed. While user input is valuable, it cannot supersede formal governance and security protocols. The consultant must ensure that the technical implementation aligns with the established rules, not just the user's perception of them. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Understanding the requirements. Clearly define the business need and the technical solution. 2. Identifying risks. Assess potential ethical, regulatory, and security risks associated with the proposed solution. 3. Consulting policies and regulations. Verify the proposed solution against all applicable internal governance policies and external regulatory requirements. 4. Seeking clarification and alternatives. If a conflict arises, engage with stakeholders to find compliant alternatives or seek necessary approvals for deviations, ensuring thorough documentation. 5. Implementing with integrity. Proceed only with solutions that demonstrably meet all compliance and security standards.